Hi, my name is Luke. Today, me and my partner Peggy Ariel want to talk about the influence of comic books on teenagers. Why do we want to talk about this topic? Because it's interesting, and we have a lot of interest in it. It's not uncommon to hear useless tech because it's a distraction. A powerful reframe is use more human tech like drawing and writing. Turn information into knowledge and build memory. Is a more active learning strategy. This is a conversation we can explore at home. When our parents tell us, go to your room and study, stop reading comic books, we can say, come on, comic books are at least not electronic devices. Don't you know comic books are so popular among teenagers? Haven't you heard of Attack on Titans and Superman? Wow, during recess time, my friends and I always focus on this topic, comic books. If I don't read comic books, I won't have common conversation with them. Then I won't be able to make friends at school. We want to know more about comic books and the influence of comic books by doing this research. These are our research questions. What are the advantages of reading comic books? What are the disadvantages of reading comic books? Manga is an umbrella term of a wide variety of comic books and graphic novels originally produced and published in Japan. Japanese manga is almost always published in black and white.
Chapter 2 Literature Review The History of Comic Books Superheroes entered the world of comic books in 1938. There are some origins in Japan in the 18th century. In Japan, comic books are often called manga, which is really popular in Japan. According to the BBC, Webtoon, owned by South Korean tech giant Naver, has 72 million users a month. In 2020, Webtoon brought in 820 billion Korean won £508 million, $702 million in revenues. The app's top creator made a staggering £7.6 million last year, but Webtoon says creator incomes vary widely. The average revenue of all paid creators was about £172,315 in 2020. From the information above, we can find out that reading comics has been one of the most popular forms of entertainment in the world. The most popular comic genre in America and Japan. The most popular comic genre is superhero comics. Not only Americans like them, people all over the world also like superhero comics. According to the Geek Vibes Nation, we all like superhero comics because we tend to lean on fictional things. In Japan, the most popular comic genre is shonen manga. According to the New York Public Library, if you were looking for manga for a young boy who likes fantasy or mystery, you would search for shonen fantasy or shonen mystery manga. The reason why comic books are so popular today. First, because of the internet or social media. Lots of people know more about comics from lots of YouTubers. Some YouTubers make videos to share their opinions and reflections after reading the comics with the audience online. Then, the comics they discussed became more popular. Second, graphic novels and comics are growing in popularity during the pandemic. Moreover, as comic movies made their way back onto the big screen last year, comics themselves also saw huge growth, and one publisher said it was their biggest year ever. The teenagers' opinions about comic books. Comic books are short and easy to read for teenagers. Most teenagers think reading comic books is a leisure activity. According to our observation, for teenagers, maybe it is an award for getting a good grade. or maybe it is a gift from an important person. Anyway, comics are important spiritual support for teenagers that are under a lot of pressure. The benefits of reading comic books. Relationships with family. If you read comics with your family, you will have more common topics. Moreover, you and your family will have the same leisure activity. Mental health. Reading some kinds of comics like Marvel can increase teenagers' confidence and courage. It also helps teenagers to be imaginative. Time management. In order to read comics, students will finish their homework earlier. So, reading comics can increase teenagers' efficiency at doing homework. Common topics. You can make friends that have the same interests. You can discuss comics with your peers, having more common topics to talk about and making more friends.
Now, let's talk about the drawbacks of reading comic books. Teenagers might spend lots of time on comic books instead of sacrificing their family time. Their relationship with their family might grow apart. Teenagers might spend lots of time reading comics before doing homework. Then, they don't have enough time to do homework. Action comics with too much violence and horror comics with their gory and gruesome visuals can lead to nightmares or bad behaviors. Teenagers might start to think that they are the superheroes and have some crazy ideas like stopping the trains or cars. That can be very dangerous if no adults are around to stop their dangerous actions. We've made a questionnaire about our topic and chose 60 8th graders from Lishan Junior High School to answer our questionnaire. Then, we collected them and analyzed the data we got.
Results and discussion. We collected some interesting answers from our questionnaires to share with you. Let's take a look at this question. How do comic books impact mental health? Up to 50% of the students signified that reading comics make them feel relaxed and happy. About 30% of the students think some comic books which include violence or pornography aren't good for teenagers' mental health. However, the other students think that reading comic books is just a leisure activity and it won't cause any negative effects. According to our question, how do comic books affect time management? We found out almost a fifth of students think that reading comic books is good for time management. They said students might finish their work earlier to read comic books. However, other students think that comic books are a waste of time. Comic books will distract them, making them not focus on their schoolwork. They will get lower grades at school. There are also some students who said that comic books won't cause any negative effects because they only read comics after they finish their schoolwork. It's okay to use their free time to read comic books. They know how to balance their schoolwork and leisure activities. Conclusions and suggestions. In our research, we found out the advantages and disadvantages of reading comic books among teenagers. First, about the advantages. Most of us students think that reading comic books makes them feel relaxed. We think that's because students have a lot of pressure. Students have to deal with lots of homework and tests. Most of us students even have trouble dealing with friendship at school or family relationships. To them, reading comic books is a good way to relieve their pressure and get away from their troubles. Some of the students say that reading comic books makes them feel like finishing their work faster. We also think that reading comic books might help some teenagers to finish their work earlier and faster to save time during their leisure activities. In this case, comic books do have a good impact on teenagers. Besides, some educational content such as science or history in comic books is good for teenagers. Teenagers can learn lots of knowledge not only in textbooks but also in comic books. Now, let's talk about the disadvantages of reading comic books among teenagers. First, many students think that comic books cause short-sightedness. The possible reason might be that they spend too much time reading comics. Second, some of the students think that comic books distract them from their studies. We think comic books do affect students' schoolwork, and it might make students addicted to comic books, not focusing on schoolwork. We think teenagers can't stop themselves from reading comics once they start reading them, and their efficiency and effectiveness of studying might get worse. So reading comic books is bad for their academic performances. Third, teenagers might end up spending lots of money on comics. Some of them even collect the whole series of comic books, and the whole series usually costs over $3,000.
Before I started doing independent research, I thought it was so hard for me. Besides, it was the first time for me to organize lots of information and write long paragraphs. At the beginning, I was so afraid that I couldn't do a great job because of comparing and contrasting lots of data online. But when I started writing it, I found out that it's not as hard as I thought because I have excellent teammates, Peggy and Luke, who really helped me a lot.